Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. 5 years ago, we fled the desert, swearing never to return. But fate and a multi-million-dollar home brought us back. No HOA, no neighbors, just peace. Until she reappeared. Karen, the tyrant we thought we'd escaped, and this time she came with vengeance. Let the war for freedom begin. It was strange coming back here. 5 years ago, I left this part of Nevada with my wife, a newborn baby, and a U-Haul full of shattered patience. We swore we'd never return, not after what Karen Stanbridge and her damn HOA put us through. But now, with a bigger bank account, stronger spine, and a private property deed so thick you could kill a bear with it, I was back, this time as the owner of a $2.3 million fortress of peace. No HOA, no neighbors with rulebooks, just silence, security, and a backyard that had a better view than most vacation resorts. We pulled up just after sunrise. Mornings in the desert feel like a fresh start, like even the dust is waiting to see what you'll do with the day. My daughter was asleep in the back seat, arms wrapped around a stuffed shark. My wife Melanie looked over at me and smiled, that half smirk she gives when she's trying not to cry. "We did it," she whispered. I nodded, parked the car, and stepped out into our new driveway. Black asphalt, smooth as silk, a 6-car width with motorized gates. To the left, the modern stucco facade of our dream home, gleaming in the sun like it was taunting the ghosts of our past. I'd had the security system pre-installed, motion detection, night vision cameras, remote access. The entire property was fenced off with iron posts and coded entry. It was more than a home. It was a fortress with a mortgage and an espresso bar. We were halfway through unloading the first batch of boxes when I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the heat, a figure behind the wrought iron fence at the far edge of our backyard, standing absolutely still. I wiped my forehead, squinted against the light. Karen. The hair was grayer, but the face was unmistakable. Tight jaw, pursed lips, arms crossed like she was holding court from her sun-bleached sidewalk. She stared straight at me for a long minute, then slowly, visibly, her mouth dropped open. I watched her eyes travel from me to Milani, to the child waddling down the front steps with a doll in hand. I could see the moment it clicked, the recognition, the rage, the disbelief. She opened her mouth, shouted something across the property line, but the wind swallowed it. Then she disappeared. "Was that—" Milani started. "Yup." "You okay?" I paused. "Yeah, just poetic, you know." An hour later, we were unpacking the garage when I heard something near the gate. I stepped out just in time to see her storming up the sidewalk, mouth moving like a malfunctioning printer. She stopped at the edge of our property, one foot perched on the curb like she was debating whether to cross a moat. "This is a closed community," she shrieked, finger raised. "You don't belong here." I laughed. I actually laughed, a full, unexpected bark. "Karen, this isn't your HOA. You don't own this neighborhood. I do. This house, this land. No HOA. Not a member. Never again." Her face twisted like sour milk curdling in a glass. "You're a violator," she spat. "You abandoned your responsibilities. You endangered the aesthetic integrity of our block. I remember the kiddie pool, the dog, the marshmallows. You mean the ones we roasted with our toddler in our fenced backyard?" "This is not over," she hissed. "Karen," I said, stepping forward. "I live here now. You don't control me." "Not anymore." She stood there another second, maybe 2, then turned sharply and marched away. The gate beeped closed behind me as I went back inside. And that was that, I thought. Just a ghost rattling its chains one last time. I should have known better. The next morning, I was sipping coffee in the sunroom, watching the sunrise bleed over the hills, when a white pickup truck pulled into my driveway. It had magnetic decals on the sides that read Nevada Regional Code Compliance, but they looked off, slightly crooked, the font just a little too Comic Sans for government work. 2 guys stepped out in orange vests and hard hats. One carried a clipboard, the other a measuring wheel. I watched them through the front camera feed as they marched up the walkway like they had a search warrant and a personal vendetta. Milani poked her head in from the kitchen. "You expecting an inspection?" "Not unless I forgot to register my patio furniture as a threat to national security," I muttered, already heading for the door. They barely let me open it before the guy with the clipboard started speaking. "Sir, we're here regarding a code enforcement action. This property has been flagged for an unpermitted in-ground swimming pool and structural non-compliance with community recreational standards. You're required to cease use of the pool immediately until further evaluation." I blinked once, twice. Then I looked down at the clipboard. It was a poor scan, low-res printout of a notice of violation, stamped with a logo that had clearly been yanked from a JPEG online. I smiled. "Sure," I said. "Just let me grab my attorney, my title documents, and the local sheriff." "You boys don't mind waiting?" The guy flinched. "Sir, this is a standard inspection." "Sure it is. That's why I just called 911. His face dropped. The other guy started backing away toward the truck. I stayed calm, keeping my distance, keeping them on camera. Within 10 minutes, a county patrol cruiser pulled up behind them. The officer, Deputy Ruiz, stepped out, hand resting on her hip, and asked me what was going on. "These gentlemen claim to be code enforcement. I'd like to verify their credentials." Ruiz turned to the men. "IDs, please." They hesitated. Then one produced a flimsy laminated badge that looked like it came out of a cereal box. The other said, "We don't have to show you anything unless you have a warrant." Wrong answer. By the end of the hour, they were both in handcuffs, leaning against the hood of the patrol car. Turns out they weren't with any city or county department. They were, surprise, Karen's husband and her brother, dressed up in orange vests and sent to intimidate us off our own land. Their truck, parked in my driveway, had HOA branded printouts in the back seat, fake inspection forms, and a clipboard listing offenses that included unauthorized backyard equipment and suspicious children's toys. Ruiz took my statement, chuckling under her breath. "This isn't their first rodeo either," she said. "Got a report last year they tried this in another neighborhood. Didn't stick, but they walked free." "Not this time," I said, watching as the truck was towed and the two men were hauled away. I pulled up the footage from all 3 cameras and emailed it to my lawyer before noon. By lunchtime, I had replaced the keypad codes, upgraded the perimeter access, and installed 2 additional motion sensors. It wasn't paranoia, it was pattern recognition. This wasn't the end. Karen wasn't done. She'd tested the waters with costume clowns, and she'd come up short. Next time, I figured, she'd come armed with paper instead of hard hats. And I wasn't about to let that land without impact. I should have expected something theatrical. Karen was never subtle. Subtlety doesn't file HOA citations for wind chimes or organize neighborhood watch patrols to monitor trampoline usage. So when flyers started showing up taped to streetlights, mailboxes, and park benches 3 days later, I wasn't even surprised. I was insulted, sure, but not surprised. They were printed in bold red letters. Emergency Community Assembly. Zoning violations and aesthetic dangers. Park meeting Saturday 10 a.m. The flyer included a small, low-resolution photo of my property taken from across the street, complete, with a red circle around our decorative stone pillars and the words "non-compliant architecture" slapped over them like a tabloid headline. Milani found one pinned to our mailbox. "I thought this place was HOA-free," she said, holding it like it had fleas. "It is," I replied, already dialing. By Saturday morning, I was standing at the edge of the public park 2 blocks down, not because I cared about Karen's fake town hall, but because I'd received 3 reports from neighbors who thought they were being summoned by the city. She'd gone so far as to forge letters from the Office of Community Planning, each with city logos, official-sounding jargon, and a signature line that read, "Edward L. Rollins, Deputy Administrator, a man who, after a quick LinkedIn search, turned out to be a retired bowling league president from Utah. But Karen had gathered an audience anyway. Maybe 25 residents stood awkwardly on the grass, clustered near a folding table with a banner that read, "Citizens for Community Integrity." Karen stood behind it in a blue pantsuit, like she was announcing her candidacy for Small-Town Tyrant of the Year. "This new construction you see behind me," she began, gesturing toward a foam board printout of my house taped to an easel, "poses a direct threat to the harmony, style, and visual character we have cultivated in this neighborhood for years." She was halfway through quoting some nonsense about architectural discordance when I arrived with a notary, 2 uniformed police officers, and a printout of my full property deed in a transparent folder. "Karen," I called, loud enough to carry across the lawn. The murmur began. Heads turned. She paused. "Mr. Walker, this is a public forum." Actually, it's a fraudulent meeting, I said, stepping forward and handing the notarized paperwork to the officers. This event was organized under the pretense of city authority using forged letters, which constitutes impersonation of a government agency and unlawful dissemination of falsified municipal documents. I suggest you stop speaking. One of the officers, Deputy Hughes, held up one of the flyers. Ma'am, did you distribute these? Karen hesitated. I merely organized concerned citizens. That's not what I asked. Karen's eyes darted across the crowd. Some neighbors stepped back. A few crossed their arms. Well, yes, but only to bring awareness. Hughes glanced at the notary, who nodded. Then I'm going to ask you to shut this down, right now. I turned to the group. Just so everyone's clear, my property is outside the jurisdiction of any HOA. The city has confirmed it. There are no violations, no complaints. What you're witnessing here is one woman's obsession parading as public duty. Someone in the crowd laughed. Loudly. Karen flinched. Then another voice. Wait, this isn't real? Karen tried to respond, but it was too late. People were already pulling out their phones, checking the flyer against city websites, realizing they'd been duped. A man in a fleece vest muttered something and walked away. A teenager with a phone filmed as Karen desperately tried to control the room. I walked up to the fake no-entry HOA property sign Karen had zip-tied to the metal fence bordering the sidewalk. I reached up, snapped the plastic strip with a satisfying pop, and tossed the sign onto the folding table. The video went viral. That night, someone posted a TikTok clip of the entire exchange, calling it HOA Karen tries to seize millionaire's mansion, gets owned by cops and a notary. It was shared in local Facebook groups, then picked up by a regional real estate blog, then spread even further. By morning, my inbox was full of interview requests. Karen had officially become a meme. But even memes can be dangerous when they're humiliated, and Karen, now the laughingstock of the community she once ruled, had just started cracking. I was asleep when it happened. Deep, post-midnight kind of sleep. The kind you don't get often when you're a business owner, a husband, and the head of a household with a 3-year-old who thinks 3 a.m. is a perfectly valid time to ask for apple slices. At 2:48 a.m., every floodlight on the west side of the property snapped on. The security system's alert pinged my phone with a tone I'd set specifically for human motion after midnight. I blinked awake, grabbed my phone, and flipped through to the live feed. There she was, Karen, in a hoodie, of all things. Gray, oversized, with the hood cinched tight like she was auditioning for a surveillance PSA. She crept across the side lawn with something in her hands. Could have been a rock, could have been a cinder block. Either way, she wasn't carrying muffins. I muttered, Jesus Christ, and slid out of bed, careful not to wake Melanie. I tapped the emergency contact button on my security app. Local dispatch picked up in under 10 seconds. This is Jared Walker at Oak Point Ridge. I've got an intruder on my property. I have visual confirmation on my camera system. Please send officers immediately. I stayed on the line as I watched Karen wind up and hurl the object, turned out to be a rock, directly at my garage window. It shattered with a sickening pop. Glass sprayed across the concrete. The sound woke the dog, who began barking from inside the kitchen. Karen jumped, slipped, and slammed to the grass like a knocked-over garden gnome. She scrambled to her feet, limping, and half hobbled back toward the street, clearly disoriented. She didn't make it. Red and blue lights cut across the lawn less than 90 seconds later. 2 patrol cars boxed in her sedan at the curb before she could even reach the driver's side. One officer, flashlight drawn, intercepted her mid-run. She tried to explain, waving her arms and pointing back toward my house, but even from my upstairs window, I could see she was panicking. I put on a hoodie and stepped outside as the officers started searching her vehicle. "Sir," one officer called, "is this your residence?" "Yes, sir. That's my garage she just busted." They popped the trunk of Karen's car. Inside was a duffel bag. Inside the duffel, a canister of red spray paint, a Ziploc bag of smooth landscaping stones, bolt cutters, and, this part chilled me, a black and white printout of my home's security camera angles. Annotated. "She came prepared," the officer muttered, more to himself than to me. Karen, now seated in the back of the squad car, tried a new tactic, claiming she was out jogging and got turned around with a bag of paint, bricks, and burglary tools. At 3 in the morning, I handed my phone to one of the officers with the footage already queued up. Here's her throwing the rock. Here's her falling. Here's her getting up and running for the car. He watched for 10 seconds, then sighed. "Yeah, that's plenty." Karen was arrested on the spot, charged with criminal trespassing, vandalism, possession of tools with intent to commit a crime, and violation of a restraining notice I had quietly filed with the county just 2 days earlier. After the fake inspection incident, my lawyer recommended it. Good call. Milani came downstairs 20 minutes later, holding our daughter, who was still half asleep, and watched through the glass as they put Karen's car on a flatbed. "She really thought she'd get away with this?" she asked. "No," I said, watching Karen slump behind the tinted glass. "She thought no one would stop her. Same as always." Later that morning, I filed an insurance claim for the garage damage, scheduled new reinforced windows, and forwarded all the footage to our lawyer, who responded within the hour. "Let's push. She just gave us cause to escalate. I'll prep the paperwork." I wasn't sure what push meant exactly, but at this point, I didn't need to ask. Karen had crossed the line, and now it was my turn. I always figured if I ended up in court again, it'd be over a software patent or some licensing dispute. Not because a deranged ex-HOA president chucked a rock through my window at 2 in the morning, but here we were. My attorney, Logan Parrish, was grinning like a man who'd been gifted a brand new yacht with the words "Open Discovery" painted on the side. "This wasn't just trespassing, Jared," he said, flipping through a folder during our strategy meeting. "You're sitting on a gold mine of prior abuse. You've got the motive, the escalation, the paper trail. It's time to go nuclear." He meant a civil suit, not just against Karen individually, but a deeper action targeting the remains of the HOA she once ruled. My house wasn't under their jurisdiction, but Logan was convinced the paper trail would show that Karen had been using HOA funds to fuel her little vendettas. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about unraveling the network she'd left behind. "Let's start digging," I said. The first subpoena went to the Oak Ridge HOA's financial office, what was left of it. Karen had technically stepped down as president 3 years earlier, but word on the street was that she still pulled strings behind the scenes. The board was now made up of 3 timid retirees and one guy named Phil, who looked like he hadn't voted on anything since dial-up internet. Within 2 weeks, Logan's paralegal had sorted through hundreds of pages of budget line items, expense reports, maintenance contracts, and community violations. A pattern began to emerge. Let me rephrase that. A damn constellation began to emerge. Tens of thousands of dollars in HOA funds had been redirected during Karen's tenure, much of it in vague expense codes like security enhancements and visual compliance services. There were payments to a private surveillance company based 3 towns over, and nestled between snow removal contracts and landscaping fees was a recurring charge, $328.79 monthly to Neighborhood Oversight Services, LLC. The billing address, Karen Stanbridge's old P.O. box. It didn't stop there. An old Dropbox link included in a financial backup revealed archived footage from several surveillance zones, including my old backyard. We're talking about video files labeled things like Walker Lawn Length August and Walker Dog Bark Volume Night. I felt my blood pressure spike as I watched one file dated 5 years ago. It was just me and Melanie roasting marshmallows with our baby in the yard, and the footage wasn't even from our property. It had been captured from a pole-mounted camera installed on HOA land, pointed straight through our rear fence. Logan leaned back in his chair. "This is illegal surveillance, misuse of HOA funds, and I'm guessing at least a dozen violations of privacy statutes. And if we can tie it to post-resignation activity, we've got a case for continued conspiracy." I stared at the screen. I knew she was obsessed, but this is psychotic. "Get this," Logan added, sliding a report across the desk. "One of the former board members, someone named Aileen Morrison, just contacted me. Says she has records Karen tried to destroy before stepping down, unofficial ledgers, alternate budgets. She's willing to testify." "And why now?" I asked. "Because after your viral video, people aren't scared of her anymore." I exhaled slowly. That part hit. The restraining order, the arrest, the viral humiliation. Karen's spell was finally breaking, and with it came a wave of people who'd been burned by her in silence for years. A landscaper came forward saying Karen once demanded he install a bench under threat of withholding payment, then fine the homeowner for unauthorized fixtures. A retired couple produced emails where she threatened to call Adult Protective Services if they didn't remove their satellite dish. A single mother showed up with fines for sidewalk chalk art because it violated surface uniformity. Logan was building an arsenal, witnesses, records, video, financial evidence, and I could see where he was going. This wasn't just a response to a rock through a window anymore. It was the groundwork for something much larger. "She's going down," Logan said, tapping the folder like it was already a verdict. "But we're not just going after her. We're going to drag out everything she ever weaponized. No more scare tactics. No more HOA dictatorship. We take this to court, and we do it loud." Milani was quiet that night when I explained what was coming. She stared out of the window toward the house we once fled. The roofline was still visible from our backyard, just past the fence, beyond the hedge. "You think she knows?" she asked. "I think she suspects, but she doesn't know what we found. Yet." I went to bed that night not with anxiety, but with clarity. For the first time in years, I felt like the ground was shifting in our favor. Karen had ruled through silence, intimidation, and fear. But now, we had something better than fear. We had receipts. The first court hearing was set for a Thursday morning in early May. I showed up in a navy suit, clean shave, and with a folder of printouts under my arm, not because I needed to bring anything, but because I wanted Karen to see I was treating this like business. My wife sat beside me in the gallery, a calm, steady presence. Logan, as usual, looked like he was halfway through chewing his adversary alive. Karen showed up late. She entered flanked by a man I assumed was her court-appointed attorney, given how embarrassed he already looked. Karen wore sunglasses indoors, a gray shawl draped around her shoulders, and an air of exaggerated fragility, as if she were the widow of some great tragedy rather than the tyrant of a former HOA. She didn't look at me, but I saw her jaw tighten the moment she spotted Milani in the gallery. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with zero tolerance for theatrics, called the session to order. It wasn't a trial yet. This was the first formal hearing, the one where motions would be considered, records reviewed, and the case given its procedural backbone. But Karen made it feel like a damn circus within 10 minutes. Her attorney opened with a motion to dismiss, claimed the suit was vindictive, unsupported, and based on exaggerated personal bias. Logan stood smooth as marble. "Your Honor, I have 6 sworn statements from former board members, financials obtained through subpoena, and security footage that explicitly shows the defendant engaging in harassment, property damage, and illegal surveillance. This isn't bias. This is math." The judge requested a break and reviewed the submitted exhibits. 10 minutes later, we returned. "Motion denied," she said flatly. "The case moves forward." Karen whispered something to her attorney that made him visibly cringe. The real fireworks came after the hearing. As we stepped out into the marble hallway of the courthouse, I heard quick footsteps behind me and turned. Too late. Karen was right there, arm outstretched, finger pointed toward Milani. "You think you're better than us now," she hissed, "because you married up. And now you've got your precious mansion and your smug little family?" Security was already closing in, but I stepped between them fast. "Back off, Karen. You don't get to talk to my wife. Not anymore. Not ever." She started to retort, then saw the phone in my hand. I hadn't hit record, but she didn't know that. Karen stormed off, muttering about false charges and targeted character assassinations. Logan smirked. "She's going to implode. Just a matter of time." And implode she did. 3 days later, someone vandalized the side wall of our house with red spray paint. "HOA trash," it read. The cameras caught the car again. Same beat-up green Subaru. Same dented bumper. Karen's. Except this time, we had a full plate number. Cops came, filed the report, and added it to the case file. Karen wasn't even trying to hide anymore. Then came the escalation no one expected. She filed a countersuit. According to her filing, we were engaged in a coordinated conspiracy to defame a retired public servant and sabotage the cohesion of a lawful homeowners association. She claimed we had maliciously provoked the community, weaponized wealth, and, my personal favorite, engaged in psychological warfare via controlled media narratives. I burst out laughing when Logan read the line aloud. But he wasn't amused. "This is serious, Jared, not because she has a chance. She doesn't. But because she's trying to buy time and make noise, delay tactics, distraction." Still, the move backfired spectacularly. Within 48 hours of her filing, 2 more former neighbors came forward. One, a retired firefighter named Greg, provided audio recordings of Karen coercing him into installing unauthorized cameras near the community pool. Just for community safety, she said on tape. And maybe keep an eye on that Walker guy. You know how they like to sneak around. The second, a woman named Erica, who'd moved out 2 years ago, showed us copies of threatening letters she'd received, unsigned but printed on HOA letterhead. They warned her not to align with troublemakers like the Walkers, or she would face the consequences. Both agreed to testify. Logan called it the domino effect. Every time she tries to fight back, she exposes more of what she's buried. Meanwhile, my security system was upgraded. I installed motion-activated lights, added additional cameras, and contracted a private patrol to check the perimeter nightly. Not out of fear, out of control, out of the need to be the one setting the tempo now. Karen used to make people afraid to breathe too loud on their own porch. I wasn't going to let her make us feel that way again. This time, every move she made only widened the crater beneath her feet, and it was starting to show. A week before the next hearing, she was caught on camera again, this time tearing down no trespassing signs from the end of my driveway, muttering to herself in a frenzy. The police recognized her. She was detained, questioned, and warned again. A third charge added to the growing list. Her reign was collapsing, but the final collapse hadn't come yet. It was close, though. You could feel it in the air. The second court hearing was scheduled just 2 weeks after the first, but it felt like we were entering a completely different war zone. The courtroom was more crowded this time, half the gallery filled with familiar faces from the old neighborhood. Some were clearly there out of morbid curiosity. Others, like Greg and Erica, sat with arms crossed, ready to testify. The mood, charged, like the whole room was waiting for something to blow. Karen arrived, looking worse for wear. The gray shawl was gone, replaced by an ill-fitted pantsuit and the same oversized sunglasses that now screamed, "I have something to hide." Her attorney looked even more exhausted than before, flipping through a dog-eared binder and muttering to himself. The judge wasted no time. "Let's begin," she said, and Logan rose, calm and crisp, and handed over the full timeline, from Karen's harassment years ago to her criminal behavior now. He played the garage window footage, the spray paint clip, the driveway sign theft. He introduced financial spreadsheets we'd obtained via discovery, stunning records showing Karen had authorized tens of thousands of dollars in HOA expenditures with no approval from the board. The kicker? A separate bank account created under a false HOA name. It was linked directly to Karen's name and had funded private security payments, home improvement projects, and a wine subscription box billed monthly. Yes, a wine box. Her lawyer asked for a recess before Logan even finished. The judge granted it. 15 minutes. When we stepped out into the corridor, I spotted Karen seated on a bench, head low, hands trembling. It wasn't a performance this time. She was unraveling. Logan leaned toward me. "She's going to settle." I raised an eyebrow. No way she gives up now. She doesn't have a choice. Her own HOA's treasurer just flipped. Turns out that morning, just before court, a man named Patrick, the treasurer for the HOA until 2 years ago, had emailed our team copies of internal emails Karen had sent him. In them, she ordered him to delay payments, manipulate ledgers, and not worry about legality. One line read, "These idiots will never check. They're afraid of me." We walked back into the courtroom, and Karen's lawyer immediately asked for a sidebar. When they returned, the judge looked directly at Karen. "Are you requesting to negotiate terms of settlement, or do you wish to proceed?" Karen stood. "Proceed." Logan didn't even blink. "Then let's continue." And so we did. Erica testified first. Calm, clear, direct. She recounted the letter, how it made her feel, and how neighbors were afraid to speak up against Karen. Then came Greg, who played the audio clip in court. The judge winced at Karen's voice, instructing him to install surveillance. When it was my turn, I took the stand and kept it simple. I talked about the harassment from years ago, the fines, the threats, the fear in my wife's eyes when our lawn got another notice for being 0.6 inches too long. I talked about selling the house below value just to escape. Then I described what happened after we moved back. The false inspectors, the vandalism, the court stunt. I didn't need to embellish. The truth was loud enough. Logan finished by submitting a final exhibit. Screenshots from the HOA's internal messaging board, where Karen referred to my family as vermin who need to be removed before the whole neighborhood rots. That was the nail. When court adjourned for the day, Karen didn't storm out. She just sat there, unmoving. Her attorney whispered something, but she didn't respond. I walked past her without a word. Milani caught my hand, squeezed it. "She's done. Back at home, we found our mailbox had been stuffed with torn flyers, ads for mold removal, pest control, foreclosure lawyers, all with red Sharpie messages like "Move out" and "You don't belong." Karen was clearly trying to claw back some sense of control, but every piece of mail went straight to the evidence box. That night, we got a knock at the door around 10:30. Private patrol. They'd caught someone trying to hop our rear fence, an older woman in sneakers and gloves. Karen. She'd claimed she was cutting through on a walk with gloves at night on private land. Police arrived and detained her again. This time she was taken in for violating the court's pretrial restrictions. The judge had previously ordered her to avoid any direct contact with us or our property. It was over. She had no more excuses. Logan called the next morning. "We're filing a motion for preemptive conviction on several charges. She handed us the final piece last night." And with that, the trial was effectively over. All that remained was the sentence. The final hearing was packed. You could feel it the moment we stepped through the courthouse doors. The bailiffs had to turn people away. Everyone from our old neighborhood seemed to be there. Former board members, frustrated residents, even people I didn't recognize. Probably just folks who'd heard about the HOA queen finally going down. There were news vans outside, cameras, microphones, and one woman holding a sign that read, "I paid my dues so she could spy on me." Karen was brought in wearing a tan jail-issue outfit, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no sunglasses. The Karen Stainbridge I'd known, the one who used to shout across yards about violations and property standards, was gone. What sat in front of the court was a woman crushed by the weight of her own delusions. The judge didn't waste time. She opened with the list of charges: falsification of government documents, impersonation of a public inspector, criminal trespass, vandalism, harassment, misuse of HOA funds, unlawful surveillance, and attempted intimidation of witnesses. The list was long, read slowly, deliberately, so every count would sting. Karen's lawyer, to his credit, tried one last time to frame her actions as misguided efforts at order. But when the judge read out the final piece of evidence, an email Karen had written during her term that read, "I don't care if it's legal. They don't deserve to live here," there was an audible gasp from the audience. When the floor opened for impact statements, Erica stepped up, then Gregorian, then a soft-spoken woman named Rena, who shared how Karen fined her dying father for neglected hedges 2 days before he passed. Every voice made Karen sink deeper in her chair. Then it was my turn. I stepped up, looked directly at Karen, and kept my voice steady. "You made my wife cry in our own kitchen," I said. "You made my newborn child grow up in a rental when we had a home. You stalked us, fined us, shamed us. And when we moved away, you still weren't done. You couldn't accept we moved forward, and you stayed stuck. You threw rocks at my house and called it justice. But today, this is real justice." The judge nodded once. Then, with a calm, almost cold tone, pronounced the sentence. 12 years in a Nevada correctional facility. No parole before year 8. Mandatory restitution for misused HOA funds. Permanent removal from any homeowners association leadership or financial position. Court adjourned. There was a moment of silence, then applause. It wasn't loud or wild. It was quiet, controlled, like an exhale held in for years. As Karen was led out in cuffs, she didn't scream. She didn't argue. She looked at no one. For the first time, she didn't try to control the narrative. After court, Milani and I took the kids to the new neighborhood park. It was peaceful, sunny, the way life should have always been. A couple of the neighbors from the old street came up to us, shaking hands, exchanging thanks. One older man told me, "You didn't just get justice for yourself. You did it for all of us." A week later, I mounted a brass plaque onto the inside of our front gate. I'd had it custom made. "Freedom, no HOA. Trespassers will be embarrassed." And that was that. We never heard from Karen again. Well, except in the occasional meme floating around our local Facebook group. Someone even made a filter with her silhouette and the caption, "This lawn is HOA compliant." Or else. Life was good again. But this time, I wasn't naive. Cameras stayed up, legal records were backed up threefold, and every new neighbor who moved in got the same welcome gift, cookies, and a laminated copy of our property deed, just in case anyone forgot who owned what.